The Four Messiahs, Book 1 of the Jesus Trilogy, Chapter 1. The whir of the saw blade, a smooth hum in the hot summer air, suddenly stopped. The silence startled the two boys playing with marbles on the sand in front of the shop. Jedediah and Joshua turned to see the stranger coming up the walk. Their father, Joseph, had noticed the man nearing the walk leading to his carpentry shop and stopped cranking, letting the sharp, gleaming blade come to a stop. Joseph was a large man, 6'2", 220 pounds, all muscle, with long black hair, dark, deep-set eyes, and a full beard. He had just turned 35 years old and appeared at least 5 years younger. He was considered by the town folk, especially the women, to be the most handsome and most eligible bachelor in all Nazareth. His first wife had died 3 years earlier in childbirth. The baby, Rachel, named for her mother, had done well, but the doctor told Joseph there had been too much bleeding for the older Rachel to withstand. It could not be controlled with either gauze packs or clotting ointments. She died at 1:28 a.m. in her bed. The baby had been born at the stroke of midnight. Joseph had been in the next room and had heard the town chapel chime midnight. Immediately there was a lusty cry. The doctor called out loudly, "It's a girl!" The crying had continued, thankfully, but Joseph also heard more commotion. Fathers were not allowed into the delivery area. Only the doctor and his female attendants were present in the room. Joseph heard further commotion and then heard the doctor barking orders. "Get some more gauze, more hot water, and where's that blasted ointment?" An attendant ran out from behind the curtain to the kitchen, all one main room, to fetch some gauze. The doctor then yelled, "Bring me some more, woman." The attendant grabbed for more and tripped. Joseph helped her up and she ran back into the bedroom. The next hour went very fast as the doctor and his retinue tried in vain to maintain the thread of life in his beloved Rachel. The afterbirth had been difficult to extract from Rachel's womb. The child had torn through both the posterior vaginal wall and the rectal muscles. This posterior bleeding the doctor was able to control, but blood kept oozing from higher up. He yelled for the attendant to bring in a large lamp in order to see better. The cord had torn away from the afterbirth, but with extra light the doctor was finally able to see it. There was a deep laceration along the left vaginal wall, which he packed off and eventually was able to locate the remaining afterbirth. The doctor gently teased that out, but it was very flimsy and came out in pieces. He thought he got it all, but he wasn't sure. One never can be positive, he thought. He packed everything as tightly as he could and immediately instructed the attendants to begin massaging the womb. Brave as she was, Rachel had let out several screams. After one of these screams, Joseph could stand it no longer and rushed into the room. The bloody scene stunned him momentarily, and the room began to spin. However, a second scream startled him back to reality. He regained his focus, and then he saw her, both of them, Rachel and the little baby cradled in her right arm, suckling on her right breast. Their eyes met. She had a look of peace in her deep brown eyes, despite the agony she was going through. He smiled softly and whispered the words, "I love you." He thought she returned the smile, but then saw her wince in pain. The attendant grabbed his arm and told him to get out of the room, fearing he would bring infection to the mother and the baby. Joseph did not resist and left quietly, blowing her a kiss. He never again saw her alive. 3 minutes later, she lapsed into a peaceful state of unconsciousness. It was now 2 minutes past 1 in the morning. He had heard the single chime from the church steeple, and a sick feeling began to tear at his stomach. He had been praying silently through the ordeal, and now felt his prayer had not been answered in the affirmative as he so desperately hoped. There was less noise from the other room now. He could hear only the shallow breathing of his wife and the occasional whisper of the doctor or one of his attendants. A couple of minutes passed, and then the baby began to cry. One attendant yelled out, "Get some warm milk." The other reprimanded her for being so loud, but she then went to the kitchen, where both milk and water were warming on the coals. She took the cup from over the hearth and dipped it into the warm kettle. She then touched her finger to the warm milk and to her wrist. She seemed satisfied that it was the proper temperature and returned to the bedroom. The baby was quiet, but within a couple of minutes Joseph heard more crying, and this time it was not the baby. He slowly put his head in his hands and began silently weeping. Rachel was a bouncing baby girl. She had weighed 7 pounds 4 ounces at birth and was the apple of her father's eye. She was the cutest baby in all Nazareth, or so the judges had said at the fall festival. During that time, a citywide contest was held each year. One of those judges told Joseph that it wasn't just out of sympathy for Joseph's recent loss that Rachel was awarded first prize. All three judges, 2 were women, picked Rachel over the other 33 babies born that year. The male judge, Eliezer, now 88 years old and legally blind, surmised that little Rachel would break many a man's heart before she would find Mr. Right. Little did he know how accurate his prophecy would be. Jehoiada was a thin, wiry man with short, dark hair and no beard. He was about 5'9" and appeared to be a dwarf as the 2 boys watched him talk to their father. His voice was high-pitched and had a confident quality. He was wearing a black armband with a Roman seal on it. The boys looked at each other and wondered silently, "Oh no, not again." Times had been extremely difficult for Joseph since his wife's untimely death. He had to not only do his carpentry, but also handle the household work as well. Jedediah was 9 and Joshua was 6. Though they were willing to help, it was not enough. Even the strong constitution and will of Joseph was beginning to show the strain. He tried to go it alone for a few months after Rachel's death, but his business had begun to suffer. He checked around with ladies of the church. One of them, Sarah, had a daughter, 16 at the time, by the name of Mary. Mary was a junior in secondary school. Sarah offered to let her daughter Mary come and help out in the evenings after school. Joseph paid her 3 pence per hour. It was a big help, but when he really needed help the most was when he was working during the day. He was an excellent carpenter, a skilled craftsman, well respected in the community and the Carpenters Guild. He was even president one year and was given the Carpenter of the Year award by his peers. Some of his work became known outside of Nazareth, and the people from all over northern Judea would come to see him about jobs they wanted done. His business was just about to take off when the tragedy of 3 years ago hit. Now it was all he could do to keep up with the local work. The 2 other carpenter contracts in Nazareth, though not as skilled or as conscientious as Joseph, were getting some of his business, as he could just not keep up. The boys thought another creditor had come calling. After all, hadn't it been happening about once a week now? Their father kept getting further and further behind on his work. This delayed his receipts. The snowball effect was that income was down and bills had started to accumulate. Though they were very young, this was a disturbing fact they understood only too well. Their father was not smiling, but the other guy was not shouting either. That was the usual scenario of the past 2 years. "Your taxes for last year are only 50% paid, Joseph," Jehoiada said. "My apologies again, sir. I should be caught up in 1 or 2 more months," the big man answered. "You know that after 3 months the penalty is 5% and 5% quarterly, 20% by 1 year." "I fully understand, sir. In 2 weeks I should have a large order completed, and then I will be able to pay in full," Joseph said. "My superior, Dorian, has sent me to collect the rest today, or he has threatened to send the guard. Have you nothing you can spare today to appease my superior? You know, these Romans, their bark is bigger than their bite, but we've got to continue playing their little game until we find a king who can overthrow them and send them back to Rome with their tails between their legs." Jehoiada let out a little laugh. Joseph relaxed a little and said, "I have a few shekels put away for the children's clothes. If I get paid soon, I might have enough then. School would start in another month. The boys' clothes were already ragtag, but he would have to trust in God to work something out." "Well, give me what you have, and it'll buy another month. I'll have to take care of old Dorian somehow, but if you don't get the rest in another month, I'll have to tack on that 5% as well. I'm sorry, but it's out of my hands, Joseph. You understand, don't you? I've already given you 1 month's grace." Thank you, sir. I'll go inside and see what I got. Joseph managed to find 4 shekels. After a couple of minutes, he came out with 2 of them and handed them to Jehoiada. Thank you, Joseph. See you in a month. Jehoiada turned and began to walk smartly down the path, thinking to himself, one for me, one for Rome. Jehoiada, sir, can you leave me a receipt? Jehoiada stopped dead in his tracks, cursed vilely under his breath, and said, Why, of course.